everybody. Welcome to another episode of What's Going On in Japan Tech Market Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, a very good friend from Japan, whom I used to work with, William here. William is a DevOps engineer, DevOps lead, and DevOps manager, and has a vast experience. So today, from William, we'll be learning about DevOps and the difference between DevOps and DevSecOps, and a lot of things. So, William, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Doing good here in Brazil. It's a chill and calm weather.
Oh, really? It's quite summer actually in Japan.
Yeah, right. And here in Brazil is the opposite.
Oh, interesting to know, William. So, William, would you give us a brief kind of an introduction about yourself, like how you started your DevOps journey and how's it going now?
Sure. Yeah, my whole career is a bit extensive because I started in 2007 working for one big consultancy, but I also worked in many other industries. I worked in with social responsibility even and with animation. But when I came back to the IT, I started working with startups. And when you're in a startup, you are a solo developer working with a handful of people. So you need to do everything, including the operations part. And at that time, didn't even exist this role of DevOps. But in the past 5 years, I've been working in Japan. I worked in big consultants companies. I worked in a mobile operator company, and always fulfilling the part of DevOps and slash backend developer. And now this current job that I'm working on, it is a senior DevOps engineer.
Hmm.
So I think it's been only, I think, 2 months, but
I
that's what I've
see.
been doing for the
So you're
past
working
five
for a
years.
Canadian company now, like.
Yes,
Oh,
correct.
awesome, awesome. So, William, what is DevOps like? You mentioned that it is something which didn't existed when you started your career, and now it is a hot topic.
Is it? Yeah. Yeah, it's good to start with a definition because we have the DevOps when you're talking about hiring universe, right? We have the DevOps roles such as backend developer, a front-end developer. You also have the DevOps engineer. But DevOps is more than just a person doing one set of tasks. DevOps is more a culture, is a set of practices, and the main objective is to make the delivery of the code in a fast way and in a high quality way. So with this through automation of steps. At that time didn't exist because people were still even this concern of like front end didn't exist. It was just a developer, and then now we started to separate the backend part, the front end part, and even the operations part. And DevOps actually the word comes from the developer, software development, and the IT operations. So you try to automate all this, and everyone in the whole chain should be having the DevOps in mind.
I see. So what are the different phases of DevOps? You mentioned there's development, there's operation, there's delivery. So
Yeah, mainly we can put in like when you start coding, and then you have the build phase and the test phase and the release. After the release, you have the deploy, and then you operate, monitor, and plan. And this becomes a cycle. So this feedback cycle. So you start by coding and then building, testing, and deploying, and with that you gather your monitors if everything is going accordingly to expected or not. Then you plan any new feature or fixes that is needed to be done.
I see. So I know a little bit about the agile methodology, right? Or Scrum Master. This is also a very hot topic now. So is DevOps or agile methodology to some extent similar?
Yeah, if you see, even these phases are very similar to the feedback cycle in agile methodology, and they're complementary, I would say. DevOps is what enables the agile methodology to be fast. So because you want to ship things fast, but also you don't want to ship things that are totally broken or not working. So DevOps tries to ensure that you're going to have tests in the middle of these phases, even automated tests. So it's going to be even easier for you to develop. And then the deployment part is being automated, it means that a developer can just merge code and this is going to be automatically tested, automatically deployed to the production environment. Deploy must be, I don't know if everyone understand really the concept of deploying, but it would be really putting your application in production environment for users to use, to interact with. So you want to avoid putting bugs on live. So you want to have all these tests automated because it's less prone to have error. Like if you're doing manually, you can break things, but automation, it's hardly the problem of the automation. It's usually problem of the humans doing.
I see. So is this like the whole like cycle or loop is done by one person, like one DevOps person, or there is a QA quality assurance people involved or other team members involved?
Yes. So when we're talking of the role of a DevOps person, such as me, right? I am a DevOps engineer in my company, and partially is really a big portion of all these phases is the DevOps part to implement, and then the stakeholders of all these phases are QA developers. QA, for example, they need to see if the code that the developer build is deployed to an environment where they can test, where they can assure the quality of that. So they need to interact with the pipelines that I build. The developers also, when they push a code to a pull request, they need to be able to see if the tests are running, and if a test is failing, they need to contact me. Hey, our tests are failing. I need to understand why, so I can help them on this. Like I built the pipelines. Um, but so if everyone has this mindset of DevOps, they understand. Okay, these guys, the DevOps engineer, they are here to build this infrastructure for us, to automate and help the experience.
I see. So how do you approach a project like that needs to implement DevOps? I think not every project would require DevOps, for instance. So,
Yeah, that's true. But for example, how I do in my small projects that usually you would say, yeah, don't need DevOps, but if it's something that you are going to be working maybe for a long time, you want to automate some of these parts. For example, the deployment. So you want to make it easy for you to code something, change, and just push and see that live, right? So this is already a start. So how I usually start is on making baby steps, making small steps, small iterations. Okay, I'm going to put this pipeline that deploys the code, and then other focus that is good to have is to aim for your final targets. Okay, I know that this is not the ideal now, but I know what the ideal is. The ideal in the final, in the end, is to have the tests automated for everything that I do, is to have a staging environment. So before really merging that, before really committing that that is going to be the approved version, I want to test that. So have a test environment. And I also want to have a way to deploy this automatically. So I don't need to do this manually. Once I merge and approve it from my test environment, that should be automatically deployed. So doing this, and also one important step that I always try to have is a way to test everything very fast and in a simple way. So just run a script that's going to do everything, and making a way that I can run this script multiple times, and it's very simple. Even to destroy, even if maybe the script runs already a destroy and create the thing that I need to do. So I usually try to, whenever I'm going to implement DevOps, really try to follow these three rules, like doing small steps, aiming, knowing that maybe this is not the ideal, but I know what's the ideal state, and making a way that I can test and iterate very fast. Does it make sense?
yeah, so doing baby steps and testing, and what is the other third thing or in the middle if I miss anything?
Yeah, is really focus in the final state.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, yeah, we know that this is not the ideal, and even among our team, we say this. Okay, let's do this in two phases. This first phase for us, we can do this manually, kind of this hard-coded or workaroundish, but we know that this is not ideal. So we create a ticket even to keep
Mm,
this tech debt. So we don't forget. Okay, we know that this is not ideal. This is right now hard coded manually process, but we want to improve this when this sprint finishes. So we keep track of that and we improve. So in the end, by the end of the year, we know that it's going to have all these steps automated, all very pretty, nicely, all green.
mm. So I think you mentioned a lot about automation, a lot about continuous integration and continuous development. Maybe you didn't use the term. So I want to know a little bit about CI/CD because we heard a lot about these two terms. But what is it actually, for non-techie people, if you can explain a bit?
Right. For non-tech people, it might be hard even to do an analogy. Uh, but just to explain, the continuous integration really is how the process to integrate the code. So imagine that we have a website and a developer needs to change the color of a button, and he creates a branch, and meaning in the repository of the code base, he creates a copy and start working in this. And with this change, after he creates a pull request saying that he wants to merge this, other peers, they can review that, and it's going to be merged back. It's going to be integrated. This change that he did is going to be, she did, is going to be integrated back in the code. This is what we call the continuous integration. And actually there, the idea of having the CI is to be able to test this before. So this whole process of branching, creating the changes, and then running the automated tests if possible, uh, and then merging back. This is all controlled in a continuous integration. That's how we call this process. And the CD, the continuous delivery or continuous deployment, is the part of the really deploying your application to production. So, because in the CI, we are talking just into the merging back into the code base. So this code might not even see the lights. But in the CD, when we're talking about CD, we're talking about the part that really puts your changes live. So first, you just change the color of the button, and as you see here in your local or in the test environment, but the users are still seeing red. So the continuous deployment is really the part that is going to get these changes put on either building this application, putting into another release, and this release is going to be really deployed to the production environment.
Okay, I think it's a bit clear for me now. For instance, like instead of so basically, I think it existed since the very beginning of development, right? So if there is any development happened in an existing app, you just test it first in the CI environment, and then when you deploy it, then it's deployed in the CD environment.
Yeah, I think this concept, these ideas always existed, but the even the continuous part of that we say is because this is being for every change that we do, there is an automated process that run and do everything. So before, right, in the 10 years ago, what how I used to do is really, yeah, test my local and then upload via FTP to the server, and then that would be my deployment, right? But
Yes.
nowadays we have this version control of the code, so you're controlling the code only. So you just change that, and then some other process is keeps looking if there's any change in the code, and okay, we identified a new change in the code, and then automatically builds a new application and uploads this application automatically to the server. So this continuous part that is didn't exist before, now with the automations,
I
it all
see.
became possible.
So basically, you mean that once the development is done, it's automatically deployed or automatically tested. Those kind of lot of automation has been integrated.
Yeah, correct. And sometimes you will have a gate for a human really to go there and approve because we cannot have anything that we just merge and just deploy. So you will have a person responsible, release manager usually is a QA person or a manager that is taking care of the releases, which feature we are going to release this sprint or this month or let's say this year, and this person is responsible to really, okay, I will approve this. So you click a button and then you start the process to deploy.
Got it. So, William, I think there is a lot of like we hear a lot about AWS, Azure. So, is like DevOps emerged more due to the public cloud recently, or what's your thought on public cloud and DevOps?
I never thought about that really in a deep perspective because I mean all these techniques we can apply to my own private server if I want to. It's just going to be harder because we have a lot of these SaaS, right? The software services companies, for example, GitHub right now, that's very big. You can upload your code there and even privately. So people can use that, and you can use these integrations of GitHub with AWS. So it makes everything easier. If you want to make everything in your own private, yeah, you're going to be building your own tools. So I'm not sure if these really came, DevOps really came from this or emerged from this, but definitely helped. I think having also the collaboration of the community, because anything that someone have a problem in AWS is easy to go and Google and search and Stack Overflow and search if anyone had any problem or how they solve it. While if you have it in your own private, is it's hard to just to fix the problem because you're not going to find anyone having your your own infrastructure. I mean, sometimes there is, but they definitely help, and they have a lot of other even inside these public clouds, right? The AWS, they have lots of services. So and many of those services are really to help the DevOps life. They have APIs, and so this allows to have automation. They have many scripts that allow me to just run a command here on my computer, and this builds all the infrastructure automatically in AWS. So definitely it's very helpful.
So, can a DevOps engineer eventually move to the path of a cloud engineer?
Mm. Yeah, I think so. Because the a DevOps person is really usually interacting with multiple services and plethora of different things that not only network and how things connect and how of other services, and we need a stream service, we need a storage service. So I think inherently we're going to deal with these things that exist in the cloud service.
Got it, William. So now this is the second part of our podcast. So I'd like to deep dive into um, security. So I want to know like how important security has been in your DevOps journey.
Yeah, it's I would say that when I was in the working for startups, security was not really top priority, and that's a shame. But they want to develop things and ship things fast, and even if it breaks or if it's not secure, and you need to cover the holes after. But these recent years working in the mobile operator, they need to have the tight security, so it's very important. And I saw how I was doing things in a very amateurish way before, and this was really bad. I was following some bad practices, and but in the recent years I've been paying more attention to that.
So how do you like changed, for instance, how do you fix security flaws or vulnerabilities compared to the past?
Yeah, right. One thing is to keep monitors. So Yeah, I think if you think that the security actually, how do people usually do in the companies is just a step in the end, right? So after the QA, I don't know, there's goes and a security tester really goes into test all the things that would be having a flaw, things that they know that they should be testing. And how we are doing now is really trying to move this more to the developer side, right? So instead of going to the end user testing the whole integrated deployed application, they want to see shifts to the QA and even moving back to the developer. So developers now run static code analysis. So they can run your code and see if there's anything that it could be maliciously exploited. And there's many tools that do this analysis. And then after the code itself, during the build of the application, even they can test, because maybe you can inject. I mean, you might be using a library that unfortunately had a problem or have a bug or have a flaw in security, that you are going to see this during the build, or even the image. Like if you're talking about containerized applications, these images also need to be tested. So all of the phases, they can have something running a tool to analyze and check for security flaws. So that's what we've been doing.
All right. So like when it comes to DevOps and the new like a buzzword DevSecOps, like what do you think the difference is? Is it similar or there are some difference for between DevOps and DevSecOps?
Yeah, I'd say that that's maybe is how the DevOps is following the path, is really to integrate security. Yeah, DevSecOps, like it's the dev and security and operations. And I think how they this is exactly how I was telling, having this security checks in each of the phases. um, while if you're working as a DevOps, you should always be thinking about security. So I think it will follow into that. But if you are a DevSecOps person working in this role, you are going to be really focused on having these security checks. While I am, I try always to put this into the all the team members. How okay, and during the peer review that your backend developers are doing, your front end developers are doing, you should focus in the code quality and also in the security if there is any ways to exploit. And a DevSecOps person would be running all the tools, implementing all the automations that would allow these security checks to happen in every step.
I see. Do you have any DevSecOps tools in your mind that you use or recommend?
Yeah, there's for each language that a developer is going to be doing, there's going to have a static code analysis. I think one of the most, and also for many other languages, it works like SonarQube. It's one application that runs and checks the codes, and then you can do this in every commit that the developer is doing. So you know if it's increasing or decreasing the security level. Also, there is Orca. I think I don't know if Google. I know that they run on Google Cloud Platform. That this would analyze the Docker images that you generate uh, for application. And let me think if there is many other tools that applies other dynamics, that security checks, that do network checks also. But I don't have any on in my mind now. But SonarQube, we definitely use it a lot.
It's called
Arca,
SonarQube, right? SONERCUBE.
it's with Q instead of C.
Oh, okay. SonarQBE, SonarQube. Okay, I'm sure our DevOps
Yeah, we
DevSecOps friends would know that. So, William, want to know more like, so would you recommend, companies, I think you have worked in Japan, in Brazil, now for a Canadian company, to start using DevSecOps now or until a certain level, when the project becomes more mature or at a later stage? Or you think
I
it's totally
think
not required because you're already testing in DevOps?
right. I think it would is always good to have in mind. So keep in mind that even to keep track of that or have someone to be having the radar and saying, okay, this is what people are using. We have this in our team, for example, that we know what people are using. So we always try to keep this in the radar because, okay, this might be useful if they're my friends, my DevOps friends are talking about this. Even if we don't, I don't think any company, every company needs to be implementing, but they need to be aware that this exists and what are the options. And but they should have in mind. And if you have resources, you have people to work on this, yeah, I think it would be good to implement and start doing this as soon as possible because it might be too late.
Yeah, certainly. So, William, we're actually coming to the almost end of our podcast today. So, I want to know a little bit of some, some advice from you. Like, what is the future of DevOps and DevSecOps? Like, if anyone is willing to start their career in this area, what would be your tips?
Right. For the future, so one thing also that I've been thinking lately is how our applications now are more close to cloud, to being cloud native, people using Kubernetes and Docker containers to run their applications. I don't think that all sizes of companies need really, but I've been seeing even medium to well, big corporations, they already using Kubernetes. So I'm seeing this movement is very also related to how DevOps, because as the infrastructure grows complex, Kubernetes makes things more complex, but it's also very nice to work with because you declare things and it's self-healing, but still it requires some effort. It requires some prior experience to this. So I think the how it's moving the DevOps and DevSecOps so it should be more close to the cloud native and all this having all the tools instead of running in the servers, the virtual servers owned by you, they will start be running in a Kubernetes, will start be running in containers. So instead of having your Circle CI, which is a CI tool in that you need to pay for to use, is a SaaS service, you would be having you will be seeing the movement of installing a CI in your own Kubernetes cluster and managing this, and you will use this to run your pipelines. For example, I've been seeing the increase of the usage of Argo, which is one ecosystem to run CI, CD, to take care of releases and workflows. And this is all deployed in your own Kubernetes cluster. So I think this is going to be the movement for the next few years, seeing people increasing the usage instead of taking care of your infrastructure in the private, putting everything this in a Kubernetes cluster, everything containerized.
Mm.
As for advice, I think if you are willing to start and look into how to be a DevOps and how to work with DevOps and DevSecOps, really first start by looking to Docker and containerization and how the containers works and how and why this was important and why this changed how we used to build development applications. Um, and looking, the next step would be looking in Kubernetes and what is this orchestration of the containers. There is Kubernetes, there's Nomad from HashiCorp, there's Docker Swarm for Docker, but they all They all work to orchestrate these containers, and they understand why this was important and how this had this impact. And then, yeah, you will know the tools just by browsing and seeing. You're going to be reading about many of the tools, so don't worry about that. Those come and go.
Okay, so you are recommending people to mainly dive into Kubernetes, dive into clusters, dive into cloud. Those are the kind of keywords they should be more focusing on.
Yeah.
Great. So William, I know you are you are having an amazing career in DevOps, and you I think managed a team. You were a DevOps lead, and now again you are a senior hands-on DevOps engineer. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years in the DevOps world,
Whoa.
or maybe any
I,
other world, meta world, metaverse world, whatever you feel?
no, yeah, I always like it to work to help the team grow and automating things and allowing the developer experience to be better. That's why I think I always, even from beginning of my career, I really was already aiming for to be a DevOps. Um, but I think working as a lead DevOps in the future might be good, and this will be even together with architecture of the solution of the product. You also need to think on how it's going to be the infrastructure of the application. And I don't know if this role exists or if the architect already thinks in everything. And but it would be kind of like these my future, like a lead DevOps, architect DevOps, thinking in the architect of the operations.
So in your company or in the organizations you work, are there like different layers of DevOps as well, like DevOps engineer, lead DevOps, DevOps architect, DevOps manager, or it's done by one or two person only?
Yeah, they usually start small, but everything as the developers, the backend developers and front-end developers, the numbers start to grow. You need to have more DevOps. Right now, uh, in my past company, yeah, we used to have these different levels, but now we also have the DevOps, the normal developer, and then you have a senior, and it should have a lead developer, right? Lead DevOps. Right now, we don't have one, but we still need to hire one actually because it's important. Like one person cannot think and how it's going to be the things of the future and be working in the present. There's a lot of work that DevOps need to do. So
I
it's always good
see.
to have a team, at least of three people, depending on the size of the backend team. But it needs to have uh, someone to think and someone to really work.
Got it. Okay. So thank you so much, William. I think it was a very enlightening session for maybe all of us, for me, for our viewers. And yeah, I really appreciate your time and let's catch up soon.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you, AB. Thank you so much.
Thank you.